What's up guys, so in today's video we're going to be learning the basics of Python programming and implementing those changes in a web application. So we're going to be learning basic data types and how to express logic in code. So here's an example of what the website will look like. So we have restaurant host portal, and this is the name of a guest, and we have their basic information here and how to extract their age. So we have their age, account balance, diamond status, extra guests that they will be attending with, and we also have their dinner order. So I'll be showing you how to do all of this in the video. So if you want to learn how to implement all these changes, stick through the whole video and maybe you'll learn a thing or two. Alright, let's get started. So first, we're going to open Visual Studio Code, and you'll see that there's this welcome page where you can press open folder here, which you can press, or if you don't see this page, click file and open folder will show up. So we're going to click open folder, and we're going to find the beginner Python project barebones folder that I will provide in a link below. So we're going to click on this folder and click select folder, and it'll open up the project structure. We can close out the welcome file. First thing we can do is just look at what we have. It's a pretty minimal code application right now, but we'll be building on it as the series continues. A lot of this might look kind of confusing if you're brand new to programming, but here's some setup steps for Mac and Windows. I'm on a Windows computer. First thing you want to do is press terminal and new terminal. It'll bring up a terminal output box over here. So you'll see that there is the choice to choose which command tool you want. For Windows, CMD I think works the best in this setup. And so if you're on Mac, this is probably going to say terminal or something similar to that. So here's the prerequisites for Windows, and for Mac it's pretty similar setup. So you're going to need to install Anaconda, which I've provided the link for here, and this will download the version of Python that we need, and it's easy to control which version of Python we have using Anaconda, so it's just a helpful software package. And you'll want to click a checkmark box to add to path during the installation, and if you don't see this or don't do this step, there's this other link that you can add that. So that'll allow you to use Python in the command line. And so what you'll want to do is, yep, we already opened CMD as terminal, and so this little sideways caret, it means to type it into the command line. So what you want to do is copy this line and paste it into here like so. So I've already done this step, so this just updates your Conda version. And so next what we want to do is pip install. So pip is a Python package manager, so it installs the package for virtual env for Python. So this will allow you to create a record of versions and packages within your environment so your code doesn't break over time. So you'll want to copy this into your command line down here. So I've already done that. And cd means change directory, and if you're not already in this path, you'll want to cd into it. Then we'll need to create the virtual environment. So this creates a virtual environment named venv. And so if there's any questions, please just write a comment down below and I'll answer all the questions you guys have. And there's this thing called Pylint, which will go over your Python code, tell you if you're writing code that's going to work. So this is useful a lot of the time. Sometimes it tells you some errors that aren't errors, but it's useful a lot of the time. So great, we have that. So now that we have our virtual environment named venv, we can activate it. So on Windows, this is the line to run it, but on Mac, it'll be slightly different or something similar. So if this doesn't work, just Google virtual environment Python Mac and activate, and it should tell you how to do it if this doesn't work for you. And so this next step, so this is for Python Flask development, so we can set these environment variables. So what this is doing is it lets your computer know which Python file you're going to use to run the Flask app, and if you're doing development work, or if this is like actually already out in the public so people can use it, this would be like production or something. So right now if you do pip list, which is the package manager, it'll show you what you already have installed for your Python packages. And so what you'll want to do before you run Flask run is, because that won't work yet, so you have to run pip install -r requirements.txt. So if you'll notice, there's a requirements.txt file, and this is all the Python packages that you'll need to run this setup, this Flask app. It's just a shortcut basically to install all those packages. Okay, so we can run pip list again to show you that Flask was installed and this other package that's useful for Python code. So if you want to see what the Flask app looks like, we can just run Flask run because everything should be working. So right now, yeah, this is the bare bones of the site. And I've set placeholders, which we'll be filling in. So I've labeled this restaurant host portal. And so we'll be making a basic web application for hosts at a restaurant to keep track of their guests. So now that we're back to the app.py, we can start building some Python code. So first, let's create a function called getGuestInfo. This will be a tutorial for data types. So the first step in our data types tutorial will be a string. So what a string is it is a collection of character values. So this could mean like a sentence, a phrase, a name. So second data type we will be learning is an integer. So an integer is a number, a whole number that could be negative or positive. So that's pretty simple. So this could be like negative 100, positive 100, or 0, or any number above or beyond that. Third, we will be learning a float value. So what a float is it could be a number with a decimal with values after the decimal. So it's pretty simple again. So in other programming languages, they might require you to write a variable with the type in front of it, something like that. So, but Python auto detects what the variable is and what data type it is. So in Python, you don't have to specifically say which data type it is, but in other programming languages, it might be required. So this is a good thing to remember, like all these different types. Fourth, we will be learning a Boolean value. So Boolean is a true or false value, and this can be useful just between choosing whether something is right or wrong. And all of these will be important in many programming applications. So this might be confusing to some people, but it's just if something is right or wrong or true or false. For our fifth data type, we will be learning lists. So for our list data type, it is a collection of items. So this could be even like an integer here. It could be anything, so it's just a collection of different values. For our sixth data type, we'll be learning a dictionary. So dictionary, you can see this is a curly brace and it ends with a closed curly brace. So you can see these are keys and these are values. So you can retrieve the sushi value using the key main course. So I'll show you what I mean later on. You can also put different types of data types inside a dictionary. So I could retrieve this list later using the key mis for miscellaneous. I can also put an integer in here and retrieve it later using the key quantity. So this covers all the basic data types through this tutorial. I will show you how to use them more advanced in a few moments. So as you can see here, I made a dictionary with keys the same name as their value, and I'm using the variable names as the value so I can retrieve these values easier later on using their names. And all of this is called a function, and there's a return value. So whenever you call this function, you will be retrieving this value. The return value I've set as all of the variables that we declared and initialized here. And so we can call this in our home route over here. So now in our route, so what routing does is the / is the home page of your web application. So when the Flask application routes to this default page or your home page, it'll run whatever's in here inside your function, and then render template home.html will return this HTML template that we've provided. So if we want to display this guest info to the home page, we can do guest info equals guest info. So we can go to our home.html. A lot of this stuff won't make sense at the beginning, but once you see more of it and write some of it yourself, it'll become easier. So if you look up the documentation, this type of Python HTML formatting is called Jinja 2. So I'll write that in help, which is a package. So Jinja 2 is a package that we installed earlier on, and it's in our requirements.txt. Any Flask application will use this as default, and it's written like in blocks. So our content of our web application is written in this block and it's down here, and it's easily extendable. If you want to do more pages, you can just extend like this says. So this is for extending our HTML. So to give a brief overview of the different components that goes into a web application is there could be HTML and CSS. So in this specific application, we're using HTML and CSS to format our output to like Google Chrome or any browser. So this whole file is an HTML file, so .html, and inside these style properties, in between these, this is written in CSS. So this gives like styling, it's called cascading style sheet. So you can give more properties here to give a better look to your website or your web application. So don't worry about the style for now. That's just some styling elements that I've added. So if we go back to this, we want to output our guest info so we can start filling out the placeholders. So specifically in Flask, you include variables using these curly braces. So if we do guest info, since we're sending the guest info data to our HTML page here, we can do guest info, and let's say we want to display the name at the top, we could do, so if we look down at what guest info is, this is the dictionary that it's showing and returning. So we can get the value of name using the name key. So we can do .name, save it, and if development mode is on, it'll automatically refresh the HTML and Python code that you've written. So now we can look up what this change does to the front end. So you can see, and if you don't see this right away, you can just refresh your page. That should refresh everything in the background. So placeholder 1 has now been replaced by this name of this card. So when we keep building upon our application, we can increase this card to show more information for this specific person. So all of that can be found in the guest info dictionary. So we can just keep adding different tabs to this card and keep expanding it. So if you see, here's another placeholder, placeholder 2. If we look at our dictionary, we can see, so we already have our name. So next we could display the age. So if we go back to the HTML and go to placeholder 2, we can do the same thing that we did for the other variable, guest info dot, and we want to do age. So we change placeholder. So this type of formatting with these cards and these tabs is a part of this CSS file that's known as materialized design. So I can include that in the help. So you can add your own custom elements if you want. Okay, so in materialized design, they have these cards, tabs. So what that means is, so here's the card, and this is a tab in the card, and this is the second, this is like extra information from this tab. If we go back to our file, here's where the card starts, and here's where we put the name inside one of the card contents. So if we go look at our web applications, you can see placeholder 2 is the name of this tab. Placeholder 3 is the value of this tab. So we can change that to say placeholder 2 is the name of the tab called age. And this can route to this ID down here. So we can change this to age and change this to age because this is in the card content and this is one of the tabs. So we can change the placeholder 3 value to guestinfo.age. We can refresh this page and see that placeholder 2 has been replaced by age and placeholder 3 has been replaced by 23. So this is the start of building this customer's card in this restaurant host portal. So we can keep building this card out to give more data and more information about this person to the host. Next, we have account balance, and we can just keep adding them. So we can copy the same format down here and do account balance. Same thing down here. We can route it using the ID, and we can give the value down here. If we go back to our front end, we can see that another tab has been created called account balance. And if you click on it, it'll give you the value of the account balance. So this is starting to look pretty good. So we can just keep going and adding more values. And so the next value is diamond status. So we can copy this over, call it diamond status, and should refresh. So let's just refresh the page. So age, account balance, now diamond status, which is set to true. So we can do a couple more. So this is where it starts to get a little tricky because these were just standard data types without having a collection. So this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. So if we want to display this list to the front end, it'll look a little weird at first. So we just have to fix that. So extra guests, we can change. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So extra guests right now is a list. So it'll display as a list. But that looks kind of weird to have on the front end, so we can make this look a little bit cleaner. In Jinja 2, the Flask HTML formatting, you can do for loops inside of here. So you can do the curly braces, and it's written similar to Python code. So you can do for key value in guestinfo.items. Since this is a list right now, we can get all the values of the list using something called a for loop. So for guest in guest info dot extra guests, and we can close the for loop and for. Don't forget these percentage signs. It's just the correct way to write it using the Jinja 2 formatting. We can exchange that for guests. And now we can see the change that will be applied. So now it looks a little bit better, where instead of looking like code, you can see the individual names. And I think it just looks cleaner. So that we have the list out of the way. Oh, there's also a button you can click here called Split Editor Right. This little thing that looks like a book. So if you click that, it'll split the screen between two files, which is useful to compare code against. So if we open the HTML file over here on the right side, we can see the two files at the same time. So now we have one last thing to output to the front end. So we can create a new tab, and we can call this one dinner order, and create the content that will be showed. Since this is a dictionary, it's going to be similar to extra guests, where it looks a little bit weird at first. So I'll show you what that looks like. Looks like it's coming straight from the code, and it looks a little bit weird. So we can format this a little bit better. There's this material CSS element that allows you to create a collection of items that makes it look a lot better. We can use that and can show you the example. I'm creating a collection with a header, and the collection header will be called dinner. So if we want to go through this dinner order like the previous guest, it's going to look a little bit different because it's a dictionary. So we can create a for loop here. This will iterate through the dinner order items and extrapolate the key and the item to use in the code. If you notice, miscellaneous has a list in it, so trying to display it to the front end will look a little bit weird too. Before we display this to the page, we'll want to change this part because we already are getting the key and the item from the dinner order. So we can grab the item directly, but also need to change the element that is displaying the item. So now that we've changed that, we can load up the screen and see what it looks like. So it created the collection correctly, and it looks like all of our values are being put inside of it, which is great. But the list is still looking like a little bad for the front end. So we can change that and make it look a little bit better. So if you look over at the name, at the key that was used to create the list, we can set an if statement. So now we have, if it's not the miscellaneous key, then don't display it like this way. If it is this way, we can do an else block here, say, if it is miscellaneous, then do this other thing. So you can see that we're going to loop through this list over here and display the output separately so that it would look better. Now we can try that out and see how it looks. Now it looks good. Everything looks great. You can add titles over here and make it just look a little bit more clean, a little bit more readable. It's a little thin, so we can change it. So this might look a little confusing at first, but I created a secondary element here. It'll be the value of the key. We're gonna label all of our keys so that we know exactly what the person ordered. We can do the same for the bottom. This extra stuff, this is just like a tab for better formatting. You'll see in a second that, and some padding so that it just looks better. So I wouldn't worry about this to begin with. That's just like extra steps to make it look better. So if we refresh the page, and it looks like this is supposed to be item, so I'm just gonna change that. So one more thing I need to change is change this to the item, not the value, and change this to miss. Okay, so now we can save the file and then refresh the page. So nice. This looks a lot better. We know exactly what they ordered, the topic that they ordered it under, and the quantity, so we know everything looks good. So this is a pretty good front page already. So for account balance, we can just add one more thing just to make it look a little more clean. Add a $sign in front of it, refresh the page. Yeah, it looks better. This looks good. So now you know the basics of data types so far, and you can make a pretty decent looking web page just using that. You can customize this a lot more and make it look better, add more information, even make more users and stuff like that. So we can go over that in another video into how to scale this into an actual web app with dynamic data instead of just hard coding everything. But for now, we can continue and go through one more lesson. So I was gonna show two parts in this video, one expressing the logic and what you just saw was the data types, but it turned out to be a long video already, so I'm just gonna post a second video for the logic and you'll be able to catch up on that, so stay posted for that. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below and I'll answer any and all questions you guys have. And if you thought this video was helpful, leave a like. let me know what I can improve on and what you guys want to know. So if you guys want to know a different language or how to do a certain technique, just let me know and I'll make a video on it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.